Hey everybody, welcome back to Escape Reality Star Wars Talk. I'm your host Caleb.
I am Seth. I talk Star Wars with this man.
All right, and we're actually starting a little bit on time for once. Um, so this week we are going to be going over a short story. We got Tales of Enlightenment. No such thing as a bad customer. Sorry, I just had a brain fart there. My brain said, "Hey, you don't know what you're talking about." But before we go into that, some Star Wars news. This week actually was pretty packed with some stuff. So we learned Jaleel White, best known for Urkel on Family Matters. Obviously, he's done a lot of good work since then, but I feel like that's the show that will always kind of haunt him. Yeah, like it made him famous, but also like he kind of wants to move on from it. He's been confirmed as playing a pirate in Skeleton Crew, which I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, Jude Law's character is still kind of a mysterious figure. We know that he's in charge of taking care of the kids that are the main characters for Skeleton Crew, but we don't know beyond that.
Playing a parental figure in Star Wars, that's a bad time for you, pal.
But yeah, he confirmed it while, of all things, while doing an interview at an Oilers game. Oilers hockey, I should clarify. But yeah, that's such a weird location to reveal. Oh yeah, I'm in Star Wars.
Strange place.
Of course, other stuff that he's known for is he was the animated Sonic the Hedgehog in the classic Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, specifically. He's also been on Perfect Strangers, the spinoff for Family Matters. Or, sorry, he wasn't on Perfect Strangers. Perfect Strangers, Family Matters is a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. My bad. My brain's still trying to kick in. I think we're both in that mode, though, where our brain is still...
Because,
we explain every week
Yeah,
that we're just usually exhausted when we start, but, like...
This week was,
Yeah. Oh, before we get into more Star Wars news, do we want to talk about the fun thing we did this weekend? Or
might as well.
yeah, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
So Seth's birthday passed.
Yes, I'm 24 now.
Hey. But we didn't go drinking.
No.
Instead, you don't drink often. Well,
drink a lot.
I was about to
Actually,
say
that's incorrect. I drink infrequently.
when you do,
do,
it's a lot.
yeah.
It makes up for it.
Fortunately, I'm not like a loud drunk.
No. You're a I'm gonna relax and kind of zone out drunk.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are watching football or whatever. Yeah, that's fine. I don't care.
But so instead you requested I run a D&D game for you, a one shot, which of course the rules of one shots are never one shots, and that applied for this one. So I've invested. So those who have followed me for a while know about this. I've invested a lot of money into Grim Hollow, which is, for those of you who don't know, Grim Hollow is it's a third-party setting created by Ghostfire Gaming, and it's basically it uses the core rules of 5e, but then it like creates a new setting set in this grim dark horror fantasy setting.
Dark fantasy.
Yeah. I think they go with grim dark is how they describe it because of it. Thank you. But it's because I think they go with grim dark because it goes beyond just a dark fantasy. Like we kind of take that role of, oh no, nothing goes right here. But so I finally
It can't go wrong. It will go wrong.
yeah. So I finally get to use that setting, and I went through the campaign guide to see like beginner adventures that they give, and so I picked the first one that they suggest, which is a lot. To tell you how tough this world is, one of the first adventures that they suggest running, it has a minimum level requirement of 4. It wants your party to have level 4 to 6 characters. And y'all fought some things that like proved that that was probably We probably should have y'all probably should have used some money to magic up your weapons some before the game started.
Yeah, I'll manage something.
Cuz
Fucking...
there were some let's not give away too much, but there were some enemies that they could not get damage in properly. They were giving half damage because a lot of these creatures had like conditions that were like, "Oh, I only take half on that."
Yeah.
And in case you don't know anything about D&D, you can negate that by like either silvering your weapons or, in the case of some of these things, getting adamantine weapons.
Yeah.
And that will negate that ability from an enemy. Yeah. Or you can just know magic and use magic spells on them, and that works too. Although certain magic spells might not, because also elemental immunities.
Yeah. Like, we were hitting them really hard.
Yeah, like y'all would get some nat 20s, and then it would be like, hey, we did 24 damage. Well, really, you did 12.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. And then... But yeah, so the premise, because I can share the premise, and we did record the game, and so it'll come out whenever we feel like, honestly. This is a situation of, we'll play the rest of the session, like, story, because we only got 3/4 of the way through it, which is why a one-shot becomes a two-shot, because you never finish the one-shot the first night.
God.
We ran for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Which is a decent time to run a D&D game. Like 4 to 6 hours is usually your generic running time for a group, for a session. Like 4 hours is your basic minimum session. Like most sessions don't go past that, and then if they do, it's your hardcore sessions.
I do kind of feel like the home game that I run suffers a little bit because I'm like, all right, I've got like 2.5 hours, kind of.
I think though we find a way to make things run in a way to where like, because like you said, you half that, but like the issue that we ran with your birthday game one shot is the opposite thing that we have, because with the game you run, because the game you run, we fly through things. We very quickly are like, okay, what's the situation? What do we want to do? Oh, we want to do that. And then
do we want to go and just
and we generally make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
Generally, I say generally because the other two players, well, 2 out of 4, and one of them usually doesn't always show up, but 2 out of 4 who do show up with me, they are a little bit slower on the uptake when it comes to keeping track of what's going on.
I hope you were paying attention.
Yeah, and that's usually the issue.
I'm not explaining it too much.
Thankfully, I'm usually there to pay attention.
It has the funny thing of, all right, guys.
Yeah, it's become a game. Are you about to talk about our favorite game every week?
The game that we play every week is, hey guys, what happened last week?
And generally, I can give a good summary. I'm usually, though, it'll be out of order, but I can generally say this is what happened, and then, but I usually don't interject during that game because I'm like, okay, I want to see if they know.
They remember.
And generally, they'll get like, I'd say about 50% of it. They'll miss some of the major details, but they'll get most of it. And then you and I will quickly be like, okay, here's the stuff that you missed that might be important that you might want to know. And so, but the opposite problem happened with the one shot, because that was a case of y'all were trying to make decisions for a good long time on a lot of things. Like very start, I could see that y'all were going to be making some choices because it took y'all a while to decide. Okay, basic premise, because I have to say the basic premise before I talk about the first decision you have to make. So the basic premise is that in this world of Atharis, which is your grimdark fantasy setting, there is a tavern that interdimensional hops and basically will find prey to lure into it. And then whenever it brings people inside of it, it will trap them and there's no escape from the tavern. And it is called the Tavern of the Lost, which is the name of the adventure. So the first choice y'all have to make is what are y'all going to do about some werewolves that are chasing you? It's the very first thing that happens. They're being immediately chased by werewolves. And so you have a choice of, are we going to fight it? Are we going to hide from them? Or are we going to run towards that tavern that's right there? And even on that choice, there was a little bit of debate. It was quick debate.
Very quick one.
But there was some debate.
Yeah.
There was some debate, which was like, oh, what? But I could tell, like, the fact that there was even debate on that, I was like, okay, this is going to be a session of conversations of what do we do, and I was correct. Which y'all did speed run some stuff, only to then slow down again and kind of make up for the time that you had just managed to regain. Y'all were like, we regained some time. Let's actually use that time to now be slow again.
Yep.
But everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Everybody seemed to everybody said they had a good time.
We had some of our friends and who had never played with each other.
Yeah, this is a group of. So we had a group of 5. And we almost had 6, but unfortunately, I guess some people just couldn't make it right on time because, like, John showed up to listen, but I guess he couldn't make it on time to play is why he didn't play with us. But he enjoyed listening to it. We had a few people listening because if you were in the Discord, you could listen in, and I basically opened an invite for people to listen in, just you couldn't interact because we didn't want to distract from the players, which is something that one of my buddies does in a different Discord server, which he actually listened in a little bit. My buddy Malik, who runs his own D&D game with some of our Star Wars buddies, like B Dazzler and some people from Podwans. They played in the Podwan server, actually. Do a similar thing where they tell everybody, hey, if you're not part of the game, just mute your mic.
Be quiet.
Yeah. You could also have conversation with us, like you can type and chat, just don't interact with the game itself. Yeah, no influencing the game. Which I think everybody respectfully did, and I appreciate that for those who did listen in. And it seemed everybody enjoyed it, though, both players and listeners. And so I hope when we do release it that you guys will enjoy it, for those of y'all who aren't part of it. Although, I guess that's incentive to join the Discord, is because we haven't figured out when we're going to do part 2 and finish the one-shot yet, but we're probably going to maybe shoot for this Thursday.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But if not, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
The benefit is it's a pre-recorded thing. We didn't do the live thing, so we were able to like not have a schedule in particular of when we play. We just have to be like, hey, when do we want to play? And that's probably if we do a campaign, which it sounds like that's what some of the people in the group want to do. Don't know on your opinion of that. It sounds like we have enough either way.
I'm fine with it.
Because it sounds like Chris and Steven want to.
Yeah.
Because they're falling in love with the setting. Which I'm already in love with the setting. I've paid over $1,000 into. Yeah, considering I put almost $1,000 into this property. Yeah. Combined, because that's with the player's handbook, miniatures I own, the dice I own.
Yep.
Yeah. The Monster Grimoire. But yeah, so, and then Kiari less so. He says he likes the setting, but it's not like something that he's immediately drawn to, because he's not a dark fantasy guy. Like,
yeah, he is. I keep telling him this. I'm like, Kiari, you'd make an amazing horror writer. But the problem is, he himself does not like to experience horror.
Which is, maybe, and
It's fine.
yeah, it's not for everybody.
I feel like I am in a weird mix of things that should be scary to me rarely are.
I think you also grew up like watching a good amount of like those type of films to a degree, right? Or no? Am I
Like
kind of well,
or like just things that were
at least horror adjacent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think me and Kiari also discussed this in that we like he never got to the part where monsters were defeated.
In most most fiction.
Yeah.
Which 90% of the time they are. There is the 10%, especially in modern horror, where there is no uplifting ending, but that's usually the point, is that it's not an uplifting ending and it's supposed to make you think. Usually those type of films, that's why they do that, but 90% of the time the good guys win.
Yeah, I think for me it has gotten kind of to the point where something that, because I'll be honest, I don't really like fear effects in games.
Oh, like jump scare type stuff and that type of thing? Is that what you mean?
Jump scares are fine. I mean, like in tabletop games, like fear effects and such.
Oh, I know what you mean.
You've gone crazy and you can't do anything now, and I'm like,
oh, so you don't like my super universe?
It's kind of lame to me because it takes away player agency to like try to instill a sense of panic. And I'm like, okay, congratulations, you've done that, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it doesn't always work.
Because then it's a mechanical thing where it works for the character, but for you as the player, it's kind of like now I have to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's more of an obstacle than an actual like fear.
Yeah. Which is why I try not to use fear abilities too often, except for things where it makes sense. Like
if we ran into like an Eldritch God, there you go.
An Eldritch God. That makes sense, but also I'm also someone who, despite having a tendency towards more like gothic and eldritch horror, I'm also like, there is nothing that man cannot know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fundamental disconnect. I'm also like,
so like you are.
It can be destroyed.
I mean, but the thing is.
But that's not.
Yeah, that's not how like works. Usually it's formless, which is kind of the point. But then it's like, well, then how can I see it if it's formless? Yeah. Now we're diving into a deeper conversation of
Thing is, for me, it produces the result of if I can look at it, I can kill it.
Yeah, this has become a D&D podcast.
Or at the very least, hurt it enough to where it's like, fuck that, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, and then. But I mean, I guess in the super universe thing, because we
really like that one.
Because we don't have fear. We have what's it called?
Like insanity.
Insanity, which are more like things. Like it's more of like it's a psych meter where certain things happen to you.
It's either just like a real quick pass or fail thing.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything that like strictly says you no longer can control your character in a way. It's more of like. This is an effect that you get now that you have to deal with until you get rid of that insanity. Unless you want it for some reason.
Me and a nutcase who was like, I need anti-venom, antipsychotics, and a health pack.
Yeah.
Because that's mostly what I spent my money on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you were set. You were like... Yeah. But there's also the crazy people that want insanity, would want those effects, and want to test the boundaries and see, like, what can my character do and still survive? Because there are players that like that. And it also, for some players, it's also a storytelling device where they could be like, how does this push my character further into, like, action by having to deal with these issues? But, yeah. So, so... Grim Hollow is kind of that, except it doesn't... honestly, I'm surprised that none of the creatures that we've ran across are really, like, fear-based. Like, you have no fear-based things.
I feel like we will run into one like that.
Just, it's not... I will admit it's not in this adventure. It would be like if we did more.
That's out in the global.
Yeah, this adventure is very straightforward.
Yeah, it's also very isolated.
It's. I said this before we recorded. I called it a bottle episode.
Yeah, it is.
It's a bottle episode. It's very much like we're in one location, but you're exploring the entire location, and it's really about the personality of this tavern
Yeah.
and getting to know the characters within this tavern, and y'all got to know the characters.
Yep.
Y'all fallen in love with some of the characters too. So I'm curious how things are gonna end, because the whole premise is trying to escape this tavern. So,
Yep.
of course, the question becomes, and I guess it's a question that it's not really a spoiler question, but it's how many people do you take with you as you try to escape?
I'm also worried because some of the people have been in that tavern a long time.
Where they're like, man, the world has changed.
No, I'm not worried about that.
That they'll just die, like,
they'll just die of old
like the
age.
effects of the tavern is what's keeping them alive.
Yeah.
Like they'll just walk out and then dust.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
In my mind, alongside my other big mistake.
I guess we'll find out.
Also, I got called out on this during the episode by like I think both Steve and Kiari, and they're like, and I don't know why it happens either, but
Mhm.
for some reason I end up taking like a weird pseudo parental role
Yeah.
like a lot.
I'd say you didn't do it in Super Universe.
Yeah, no.
You haven't done it in the Star Wars games yet.
Yeah, no, I've
Yet.
Yeah.
Yet. I say yet because there are.
Universe, I was considering. I'm like, Sylvester's probably gonna lean more towards that while looking out for.
You've become like
sub.
you've become besties with Tsub. I wouldn't say a parental figure though. You're more like a big brother in this case because you're about the same age. So it's less of a
Sylvester is a jackass.
yeah.
Except to sub.
But that's because everybody else is a jackass to the sub.
Yeah.
If y'all haven't viewed, there's the Super Universe. So, for my books, the Super Worlds books, I created a tabletop setting, and it's not D&D based. It's my own like. It uses a lot of similar rules, but
It's more akin to Pathfinder.
yeah, it's a blend.
Yeah. It's like earlier we said, you have the sanity meter, and then in terms of like the skills, they work more like Pathfinder.
Yeah, and so like you get like because I like to see so I like the simplicity of 5e, but I like the talents and the ability. I like seeing the abilities go up in Pathfinder in that regard.
And so what it is.
So it's a simplified version of
Yeah.
like Pathfinder in 3.5, but with an insanity thing added as well because I wanted it.
You also kind of have like the talent things from Force and Destiny mixed with like Mutants and Masterminds has a similar thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a blend of all my favorite like tabletop games because I
You're like putting it together. And I like it. I want to go back there sometime.
because I think it's a fun system, but of course I made it so I'm biased.
Yeah.
But everybody who's played it likes it, and they like the adventures anyways, and they like their characters that they made in it.
Yeah,
Like-
I punched a robot.
Like
Kill the crime lord.
I would say my favorite players to watch do things are you, Julie,
Yeah.
because Julie keeps fucking with the sub, and but it's also like it's genuine, but it's like it's kind of like it's like being the mom of the group,
Yeah.
but it's also like the mom of the group who also likes to fuck with the youngest. And then even though it makes everybody mad, stuff that Josh does.
God. Josh is very entertaining to play with, I will admit.
Yeah, it's just frustrating in the moment, but then when you reflect on it, you're like, okay, that was funny.
Yeah. It's like,
Because in the moment, you're like, how do I deal with this shit?
thanks. Thank you for fucking black bagging and killing the target I was trying to get back home.
Because Josh made, because he played a politician, but he was like, I want to be a dirty, corrupt politician who's like playing everybody, and it became like House of Cards, and it's just like, and mixed with like Game of Thrones like bullshit, and then he teamed up with Philip that when as a lug nut, and that's when it became like worse, because when the two of them got together, it was like, oh no, because you had two corrupt politicians. One really just going for the ride.
Yeah.
Josh was the one masterminding things, while Philip was like, I'm just going along.
See what happens.
And then you had Bartimus, on the other hand, trying to play against them in that game. We just had a good group. Like, it was an entertaining group.
All I remember is that Sylvester didn't struggle when like police showed up to arrest him, so that at the end of it, I was just like, I'm just gonna take the body and leave, and no one stopped me.
Well, yeah, because you went through. You were very privileged in that you look very much human and all that, even though you are raised amphibian.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Sylvester is weird.
Sylvester got, yeah.
He's half Ashwinian, half human, raised on Amphibu.
Yeah.
Who
A little bit of your privilege. I would say Sylvester got away with some privilege there with how the arrest went down, because if we're gonna, because yeah, he got some privilege.
Also, he didn't do anything, so they were like.
Whereas Tasub would not have gotten that same privilege. You were very privileged. You were human privileged, because they were like, oh, this is a human, and he let us just take him in, so obviously he's not guilty of anything, and so that's basically how that went down.
And then the fucked up part,
which feeds into the political machinations of everything, which feeds Josh and
get this guy on anything.
which just feeds Josh and Philip into doing what they're doing, because Josh is human as well, so he can get away with whatever he wants. And then like Philip less so, because he's a robot.
Yeah.
Because bots are currently like treated
Second class
or worse, depending on who you run into. Because a war against robots just ended.
It just ended like a month ago.
Yeah. And so, of course, we get into the politics of how robots are treated, which is interesting because of the murder that happens, which then leads to me creating, I think, one of everybody's favorite NPCs from that campaign, Detective Bleu. Which we all started like coming up with different ways of saying it. Blah, blah. Because because Knives Out had just come out, so of course I was like, oh, I'm inspired by by Knives Out, and so we had to have our like super country detective who is a robot though, who's been around for 1,000 years.
It very much is. Super Universe is very much like Marvel meets Star Wars.
Yeah, that's how I push Super Worlds as a novel. I say if you like the MCU, if you like a Star Wars movie, you'll like Super Worlds. Yeah. Because
also
I know sci-fi is normally meant to be written to be deep. Okay, I know people. I know you're supposed to write with like the mentality of what is deep and like Star Wars is that. Star Wars has some of that, but I don't write with that mindset. And while yes, you can find messaging in my stuff, like the Super Universe campaign we ran, you could find the ideas of like American politics and corruptness and racism even with it. You can find that stuff, but I don't write it thinking about that. I write it just based on stuff I like. Like I'm like, oh, I like sci-fi. I like superheroes. I'm just gonna write what I basically write with the mindset of, would I read this? Would I play this? And I'm like, that's the best way I find writing is. I find that if you write stuff that you will like, you cannot go wrong. Even if nobody else likes it and nobody buys it, which has not been a problem for me. People have bought my stuff and liked it. I'm not I'm not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not making bank off of it yet. But like I've had people purchase stuff and like it, and so I think as far as that, I think I am successful. I wish, obviously, do I wish that I was making enough that I could like make a living off of it? Yeah, but that's the dream of, I would imagine, any artist wants to make money off of what they do and be able to live and do what they do because they love what they do. And that's the thing. It's at the end of the day, like when people say, "Oh, you're just in it for the money." Well, kinda, but not in the way that you're saying it.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't do this to be a sellout.
I
did this because I was like,
I
want to eat, motherfucker.
Well, it's not even just that. It's
like,
I like doing it.
Like doing it.
And
even better, pay me.
Yeah, who doesn't want to do something that you enjoy and get paid for it?
Yeah.
Like, if you say that you don't want to get paid doing your favorite thing, you're lying. And it's the same thing with and now I'm gonna circle it back to Star Wars because we got to get back on topic. It's the same thing with, because Twitter has been having this thing again of like shills and you're a Disney shill and stuff. It's like, I wish to a degree, like I would still be honest. But if I was getting paid by Disney to do this, do you really think I would, do you think I would have a Patreon? If Disney was paying me to talk about Star Wars, I wouldn't need a Patreon. I wouldn't care if people were liking or subscribing to my stuff if like, because I'm getting paid, but I'm not. And it's the same thing, and I'm not even, and of course there's way bigger people than us that do this for as well, like a lot of our mutual friends, and they like, we haven't been called out for being shills by anybody, but they have. And of course it sucks because I know they don't make money doing this stuff. I know, like, one of my friends just went back to college because they are trying to get a PhD in what they actually do, because they don't make money from Star Wars content. At least not, if they do, it's not a lot. It's not enough to make a living. And there are very few people that make a living talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
It is like very small, the margin there. And it's definitely not from TikTokers.
No,
sorry,
TikToks, you're not.
TikTok does not pay very well on its output. And like, it pays less than YouTube on the output. And for those of y'all who, we're getting into the nitty gritty of how financial analytics work, TikTok does not. It pays like barely. From what I understand, it's like half of what YouTube pays, and YouTube is already like pretty
stringent.
Yeah, it's because usually you get paid like, depending how well your video is doing, you're getting like maybe a few dollars here and there, especially on our level.
Yeah.
If you're a little bit bigger, you might be getting $100 or so a month.
We're not very big.
Like, if you're a bit bigger than some of my friends, you're making that. And then if you're an even bigger with a well-known name, then you're probably making 1,000 or so a month. But once again, that's barely enough to make a living. So you're still like trying to find other ways to make a living, which is why a lot of people do merchandising as well, which is something I've thought about. Like, there's some cool moments where I'm like, oh, that could be a T-shirt, but it's having to figure all that stuff out. For me, that's a thing, and also who would buy stuff from us, because we're still kind of building an audience.
We're small. We'll get bigger, but for now,
because we don't quite have like 1,000 subscribers on. We don't have 1,000 subs on YouTube. We don't have 1,000 follows on TikTok or anything like that. We're not big on anything yet. Because 1,000 is really where I would say that's when you should start really monetizing. It's the only time you can start monetizing on YouTube, because you have to have 1,000 subs, plus a few other check marks you have to fill out.
Yeah.
all thanks to a bunch of issues that have happened. It used to be you could monetize immediately, but
Not anymore.
not anymore. I've been on YouTube long enough to have seen the moments when you could monetize immediately, which I did have a channel that was monetized immediately at one point. Um, Escape Reality Films is not. Because I think I would still be able to monetize off of that if I could. If I yeah, I think I can still monetize off the other one, but I just don't post there, and it's where there's stuff that I'm not entirely like. It's stuff that I would like to improve on if I were to ever redo some of those videos. But yeah, so back to Star Wars though. Let's talk about the news real quick. We'll kind of
After our,
yeah.
I was going to say a brief aside, but I don't know how long we spent talking.
We've been 30 minutes into the show.
Oh boy.
So we're gonna kind of rapid fire the news.
Yep.
So we got two Andor pieces of news. The first is that it won a Peabody Award in the entertainment category for 2022. I think that is well earned. I think Andor should have gotten a few more awards and other. Yeah, I think Andor was a good show that deserved some awards with how it was done. I think the writing was well done and stuff like that. Speaking of the writing and speaking of Andor still, Tony Gilroy is backing up the Writers Guild, who are currently on strike, by putting Andor Season 2 production on pause. Which he's a producer in the case of this show, but he's also a writer, so I guess that's part of why he's... But not all showrunners are also back. Like, this is very complicated, because Disney apparently tried to push showrunners to come back onto their shows, but with half of their duties, because part of their duties is to write. But if they force their showrunners to write, then it goes against the guild, which that would be... They would have to pay a lot of fines if they tried to force writers that are within the guild to write during the strike. Of course, that's not stopping any company from bringing in scab workers. But so far, nobody has really, from what I've noticed, there's been no scab writing. Because most people, if you're going to, and this is coming from somebody who wants to step into the industry, do not try to do it right now. If you want to be a writer, you do not step in while the Writers Guild is on strike, because you will not have a career after once the strike is over. Because all the writers in the guild will remember your name, and they'll know that you went behind everybody's back and did not work with them to get better pay, better treatment, which is what this strike is about. It's about better treatment and better pay, because they've been basically getting paid pennies on the dollar for streaming shows because of how the contracts were written way back when.
Yeah.
Because the contracts were written in a way where this is a time when the only things really streaming and only web content people were making were for, like, YouTube.
Yeah.
So they didn't think that, okay, your writers for a YouTube video don't need to be paid a lot compared to writers on a full-blown TV show that's on TV. But now we're in this weird gray area where our TV shows are streaming shows, but because of the wording of the contract, they are still getting paid less for doing way more work. And that's essentially that's the main crux, but there's like a bunch of other issues within that that are like, because obviously one issue is not going to be the entire reason that a strike happens. So it's a very complicated situation that hopefully will get resolved.
You could joke about Welcome to America. It's always complicated all the time.
Yeah. But hopefully it will get resolved in the favor of the writers, because they deserve it. They're the reason we get our shows. Like, without writers, we do not get the shows that we love. That's the issue you should take away from that.
Write the story before the actors and everyone can go through with it.
Yep. So, show love to them. Don't cross the line. And just stand with our writers. Speaking of stuff that has writing, I guess, comic books. Actually, let's stick with TV real quick because there's three more pieces of TV news. So another thing is The Acolyte. Leslie Headland, the showrunner for that show, she expanded her elevator pitch a little bit for everybody, so we kind of understand what type of show this is going to be. And she's in the past said it's basically Frozen meets Kill Bill.
Okay.
And that
movies I watched later in life.
Kill Bill is one of those.
Where I watched Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2.
There's a really good cut that Tarantino released that's both of them combined.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. In that it's going to be a female leads and obviously we're expecting this kind of action-heavy type story. It seems like maybe a little bit darker because it is The Acolyte and it is going to be...
I would hope it's a bit darker.
But now she's added the following, and this is according to via Star Wars Leaks, which is being brought to us through Star Wars Newsnet. So she has added, it is sort of a joke, but it was my elevator pitch to Kathleen Kennedy. I want to take that revisionist version of female villains that you see in fairy tale media and tell it through that lens.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, I didn't get the sense from the title being like...
That it's going to be a good guy.
All red.
Yeah.
Like a lightsaber burn. I was like, this is going to be interesting.
And of course, everybody's been kind of wondering if it is going to focus on the villains because we've had so much of like the Jedi within the stuff that we've seen of like behind the scenes photos. But she has insisted, saying, when I was a young queer girl, I was just hanging out with Ursula, the Sea Witch from The Little Mermaid. As a queer girl growing up, if you don't identify with the heroes and the villains show up and they're all queer-coded, which Disney had a thing of that.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, yes, that's me. As a queer filmmaker, you're going to see some camp, inevitably, but I would say that tonally our references are darker. So, yeah, she's really pushing on, yes, we are following the villains. Because that's what she knows. Because Leslie Headland has said she's queer, she identifies as queer, and she's grown up with like the villains being queer coded all of her life, and honestly most of our life growing up. I would say most classic villains in animated films were queer coded, and I'd say it's more recent.
The record, fuck Gaston.
Gaston is actually the exception to that.
Yeah,
yeah, he's a terrible, yeah.
Is what he is.
Yeah, sexist braggart.
That too.
Yeah. But yeah, so she made it clear we are following the villains. That's the main point to take away from Acolyte. Speaking of villains in TV shows, Dave Filoni has said that Grand Admiral Thrawn will be a straight up villain in the New Republic era.
Yeah.
Which I am not.
Thanks.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Really?
Because if you have read the Thrawn novels, the canon ones, it does not fit the character. And also watching Rebels, it does, like, yes, he's a villain in Rebels, but he's a villain that, like, he's got ulterior motive. Like, he's not working with the Empire because he agrees with the Empire.
I see.
He works with the Empire because, and it's the same thing with even in Legends. Legends kind of changed that, I guess. But in canon, he works with the Empire because they have the best resources to defend the Chiss ascendancy back home.
Yeah, I kind of get the sense that, like, from what I remember of Thrawn and what I have seen, is that man is, like, ruthless.
Yeah, he's still ruthless. And he still does terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
But, he's antagonistic, but I wouldn't say he's a...
I don't think it's always from, like, he's not evil for the sake of it. He does a lot of evil shit.
I would say the most evil for the almost sake of it thing he did was make that guy blow up on the bike, knowing that it would blow up. I don't know if you've seen that scene where...
I have not.
there's a scene from Rebels where Thrawn knows that... So... he's on Lothal making sure all the factory stuff is working correctly, and they're building, and the people of Lothal are forced to build like the Imperial speeders, right? And they have been blowing up out in the field when they hit a certain speed, And so Thrawn knows that obviously somebody's been fucking with it, and so he has one of the production workers test it for him right then and there. He's like, "Hey, go ahead and test it for me," knowing that it will blow up. Which is probably the most evil thing he's done.
Is this like as soon as it gets off the assembly line kind of
Yeah.
stuff? Okay, so he's trying to he's probably...
He knows that it's probably been messed with on the assembly line.
He just wants to make sure.
Yeah. He wants to make sure it's being messed with on the assembly line, but not after.
Of, like, some stuff out in the field.
Yes.
In transport.
Basically proving that somebody within the factory is the issue, which he is correct because it's Thrawn. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I will give it a shot. I will see how that takes. Because I just always imagined that Thrawn would kind of... I imagine that we would still get Heir to the Empire Thrawn, which is more of he's taking over the Empire because he's the last guy left who can take over, but not because he agrees, once again, not because he agrees with the Empire, but because he needs the resources. And in the case of the classic Legends Heir to the Empire, he wants to take over the galaxy still, but more to unify it against the external threat that's coming. And I would say in Legends, he does it in a more iron fist, harsh manner that you would expect from the Empire. Whereas I don't see Canon Thrawn working the same. Like, I see him still trying to unify the galaxy and maybe doing it through a little bit of force, but I don't know.
We'll see.
It's so weird. Because the novels don't... I have to reread the Ascendancy trilogy because it's been a minute, but I know at least in the Thrawn novels that take place during the Rebels era, I wouldn't agree. And then the last TV news, this one, and then we got two more pieces of news right after that, is Visions, 3rd season, already in development.
Yep.
It was something we talked about off the air after, I think after we had filmed.
I think I was like, what do you mean they're sending season 3 into development already?
Yeah. Because that's... Now, of course, it's because that now I remember why we didn't talk about it. It's because it's a rumor, but more than likely it's correct. I wouldn't be surprised, because now I remember why we didn't talk about it. But I could see it being true, and I wouldn't be surprised, because both volumes have done well with the audience. Everybody's liked Visions. And Visions is kind of easy to make in that you get a bunch of studios that want to do Star Wars project, let them do whatever they want in the Star Wars universe because it's not canon, so they can do whatever they want. And there you go. Yeah. So I don't see why not. Comics.
Yes.
High Republic Adventures. Yes. So Phase 2 of High Republic is obviously ending. So they got to wrap things up. We were supposed to get issue 5 this past week, but it got delayed at the last minute, and now it's coming out on the 31st of this month, which I read issue 4 today and actually posted a video on TikTok talking about it. I also posted a video talking about the Free Comic Book Day issue, which I talked to you a little bit about off air. Oh boy. But as for wrapping up Phase 2 for High Republic Adventures, they have announced that they are going to drop 6, 7, and 8, which are the last 3 issues, simultaneously on the 28th of next month. So rather than stretching them out and letting them kind of... They want to drop 6, 7, and 8 together. Which I'm fine with. More comics to read. I like having... that's my favorite thing about Wednesdays is more Star Wars comics. Wednesdays is when we get our Star Wars comics. Except for when we don't, because every few weeks we don't. Yeah.
Sorry, Sam Malgan.
I do like the way they're doing the covers for 5 and 6 though, where it's like almost a shared image.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, Daniel Jose Older, one of our favorites here, just keeps providing on the writing. And of course, we've been, I've been loving the Pirate Cruise from back then because of course you got one of our favorite Dexter Jetsters as a pirate.
What did you do?
He does anything and everything. I mean, he was a pirate during this era, and then he's a miner during when we see him in Padawan, which is when he first meets Obi-Wan.
He's a
Well, because he mentions in Padawan that he's basically a for hire guy,
yeah,
like whatever people. Yeah,
miner,
he's whatever people.
restaurant owner.
Entrepreneur. So the last thing, not the biggest of news. New trading card game coming out because we haven't had one for a minute. We haven't had a card game in a minute.
Oh shit!
And of course, Fantasy Flight's working on it because Fantasy Flight still owns the license for a lot of their parent company. I actually really owns the license for it, and then Fantasy Flight gets given the ability to work on things. They just don't work on the RPGs anymore because Fantasy Flight doesn't do any RPGs anymore because they had some other RPGs, but now they don't do any of them.
I've become saddened by this reminder.
It's okay. Their parent company gave the RPGs to a different like company that's like under them. So like right now it's just a matter of when are they gonna start doing more
We're
RPGs.
given different chores.
Yeah. So Fantasy Flight is bringing Star Wars Unlimited is what the name of the new card game is. It's gonna have some cool. I do like the Unlimited like their announcement art. It's very nice. It's very stylistic. Um, let's see. I'm just looking at the quotes real quick here, seeing if there's anything. Let's see. According to the game's head of studio, Star Wars Unlimited is a culmination of FFG's rich history mixed with the celebrated Star Wars brand. As a studio, we are putting unprecedented resources across every department into this game. We could not be more excited to get this out into the world for everyone to experience. We can't wait to show you more. And let's see. So, Fantasy Flight Games also develop what they call living card games. This is not going to be one of those. It's a trading card game. Because you've got your living card games where you know what you're getting in each box and each box that you get. Whereas a trading card game, when you open the pack, you don't know what you're going to get. Which FFG does a lot of living card games, and it's surprised we've never gotten a Star Wars living card game. At least from them. Because, I mean, FFG does the Lord of the Rings card game, the Marvel card game, and the Arkham Horror living card games. So, I mean, but I'm excited. Another card game, which I had actually just got you into Destiny,
Yeah.
but now we're going to have this game to try soon enough.
I think No, I don't think so. Never mind.
Anyways, let's get into our main subject because we are now almost an hour in.
Yep.
I'll let you take the lead. Yeah, we're back
Everything is fucked.
where everybody knows your name. Because it's also the Enlightenment tap bar.
Yeah.
So, this is, I mean, Tales of Enlightenment is basically Cheers, but if Cheers was really, really dark.
So, Luna and Parali are hanging out at the bar with Graydon, and Parali opens up with. Parali takes a stance that I'm like.
Yeah, they're kind of annoyed with the fact that their buddy doesn't hang out with them anymore.
They're like, where the fuck is Ket? And it's like,
He's
helping with
the Jedi. He's working like extra hours full, like because he works at the at that temple. And they're just like, yeah, he's basically got overtime.
Yeah. Oh, he's got some overtime now, all right.
But yeah,
They're like, I don't know, man. Getting involved with Jedi, always a risky proposition. And I kind of have this like back and forth about it. And so, at that, Muna is also like, yeah, I was gonna bring my a friend of mine here to introduce you all. And so she goes and is like, yeah, well, that's a shame. Meanwhile, I think it's an Aroni soldier, comes into the bar and is like, I heard this was like one of the best places to be here.
yeah. So basically, to kind of speedrun it a little bit, there's an Aroni soldier and then an Irem official also in there.
Aroni soldier, also shows up to this.
And they basically start shit talking and are about to get into a fight when Kraden's like, hey, my one rule.
Like, the Aroni soldier actually takes his gun out and is like, I'll just fucking blast you right here.
And Kraden, being the badass that he is, just goes, yoink, nope. Takes his gun.
There are only 2 rules in Enlightenment. 1, no violence.
2, no theological debate, which, politics or religion.
To deal with that shit.
Yeah.
None of that here.
Yep. Unfortunately, shit goes to all hell because the Battle of Jeddah starts.
Yep. And, like, both of the Aroni and Aromi soldier had kind of, like, gotten to the point of, like, alright.
Yeah, because they actually started to find, middle ground as they talked about.
Because they both participated in the same battle.
Yeah.
And they were like,
which battalion were you? And
that kind of thing.
And so they actually almost find middle ground.
Almost willing, to not forget, but, at least stop.
And try to move forward.
No, just stop.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, try to move forward in the sense of, move on from this, because they almost get to that point. So and then the battle happens.
And they both essentially have the, back to the front, I guess.
Yeah, and so things go to hell in part 2.
Really bad in part 2. Because enforcer droids, rioting.
Basically everything that we've talked about in any other time where we've talked about the Battle of Jeddah.
Yeah.
It's
anything that could go wrong has. And so they do get not saved by a Sorcerer of Tund and this Jedi apprentice Maddie,
which are characters from the comic book. So you'll get to you have not met them yet. I like them both. The Sorcerer of Tund and Maddie are awesome.
They do their best to hold on.
I was happy to see them in this.
Sorcerer of Tund, Maddie, and Kraden are doing their best.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they are 3 people.
Yeah, because
Jesus Christ, there were a lot of it.
Because this ties immediately into the comic. Because in the comic, Maddie, Sorcerer of Tund, and I forgot his name, Valdar Mac, who's the other main Jedi in the comic. They basically run into Enlightenment Tap Bar with a bunch of refugees, including some Path members, and they're like, "Hey, we need somewhere to stay safe because you say the Enlightenment is a sanctuary. Prove that." And Kraden's like, "Fuck, fine."
Get it.
And so they find a trap, there's a back entrance, exit. Yeah, there's a smuggler's tunnel. Yeah. Well, he hasn't used it in a long time, and so
ever since the last incident.
And so Vildar and one of our other characters, Tay Sarek, are in that tunnel. Meanwhile, he tells Maddie and them, "Hey, defend everybody else at the tap bar because that's our job. We got to defend everybody, even the Path members." So. And so this story is that perspective of what happened during that.
Yeah. And Luna and Brawley are like, fuck.
Yep.
Eventually, Muna's like, by the way, Muna's girlfriend arrives during the refugee thing. And she was like, alright, by the way, this is my girlfriend Parali's like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Sure wish we could have met under different circumstances. And they're like, okay, well, the Jedi and the Sorcerer are not gonna last forever.
So we need to work together and
have to figure something out. And they're like, hey, you know that really annoying electric guitar we have? That none of us like, but Kraden pays this lady to play anyway? What if we use that and just used it to, electrocute the droids? And they're like, alright, we need to put the speakers in place, so if Maddie.
Yeah.
If Maddie and the Sorcerer can, keep that up while we go and set that up, we should be fine. And hopefully it'll work.
Yep.
And fortunately, it does. So everyone is relatively safe. No one died.
No, which is, you know,
I think the most that happens were a few cuts.
we get
like one blaster shot.
we get a slight injuries here and there, but nothing fatal.
Nothing fatal or serious.
Which is nice to see in the High Republic. It's nice to see. I mean, honestly, though, Tales of Enlightenment generally doesn't deal with like death yet. I think I don't know if we're getting any more Tales of Enlightenment out of this. I have to double check. Because we're not quite done with Phase 2. We're almost done.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
They go, and it works, and they go outside. To the very least, Pirali does.
Yeah.
And he is just, like, looking over things, and he's like... He's just crying in the street because everything's fucking destroyed and gone and messed up to hell and back. It's like... One of those days, man. One of those days.
Yeah. I'm double checking right now if we're getting any more. I don't think we are. I think the next Star Wars Insider is moving on from this era. But yeah, that was no such thing as a bad customer.
Yeah.
And none of our customers were really bad.
Really bad.
I mean, we almost had some broken rules, but not quite anything terrible.
Yeah.
I like the story. It's short, sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you get though with these Star Wars Insider stories. We're not expecting like grand storytelling where it's almost novel. Like no. These are like, okay, let's get to the point. And they're a little light in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh.
I think I'm gonna do this one again. A good solid 8.
Yeah, I could see that. I was almost 7.5, but yeah, 8's not bad either.
Yeah.
Trying to see what the next Star Wars Insider short story is. Has been announced to be, anyways. Oh, it is a High Republic story. Let me double check. It's not Tales of Enlightenment though, because it would have said Tales of Enlightenment. Well, no, it is a Tales of Enlightenment. Okay. So, that's the next Insider might be the last Tales of Enlightenment, or it's going to be another 2-parter.
Yeah.
We haven't got. I mean, not every Tales of Enlightenment's been a 2-parter. A lot of these have actually just been straight up just one part.
Yeah.
I think this was one of the first 2-parters for Tales of Enlightenment.
I think so.
So.
For this one. Oh God.
But yeah, we're almost at the end though.
This one.
What's that?
No, Keth is gone on this one.
Oh yeah, Keth is likely almost dead, if not dead already. Because we're getting closer to his death, I think. Because we have to remember, like, the Battle of Jeddah happens, and then, like, everything else happens, like, immediately after.
Yep.
Like, there's almost no break after the Battle of Jeddah.
God.
And so.
Battle of Jeddah followed immediately up on Dawn by the Night of Sorrows. Like, 3 days later, if not that.
Yeah, like, it's pretty quick. So let's see what we're talking about next week. We did move things around so we can include this, but not too much so. Next is, the comics. At least the first 5 issues. Because we're going to talk about the High Republic Phase 2, Volume 1, Balance of the Force. So you're going to get to finally meet all of our comic characters next. And then Jedi Survivor the week after. Which, you've seen the gameplay. I finished the game this past week. I actually played. Yeah, you did. I'd say you need to play some more.
I did my best.
Yeah, we're
not spoil anything for you.
You didn't. I basically figured things out on my own. Yeah. The only thing that got spoiled for me was not because of you or anybody on purpose. It was random TikTok luck. I was scrolling through, and one of my buddies was live, and I saw a spoiler, and yeah. It's not his fault. It's just a TikTok thing. TikTok's lives, I wish they, I don't know. There needs to be a different way to do TikTok lives like that, especially for video games, because people can stream video games now. I mean, there's got to be a way to, like, especially if the game is new, which I've heard stories of, like, the TikTok algorithm being a pain anyways with new stuff. Like, there was somebody hanging out with me and a few other buddies doing movie night in Sawyer's server, and they were talking about how they were scrolling through TikTok, and they got, like, 3 Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 spoilers in a row. And each time they would get a spoiler, they would hold it, because on TikTok you can do you can hold it and then select not interested. And they did that every time. And it's just like, the first time, maybe the algorithm thinks that it's the content creator that you're not interested in. But when it's like 3 times in a row and it's different content creators, that's when the algorithm should kind of figure out that it's not the creator, but the content itself that you're not interested in. And because the TikTok algorithm is smart, so it's weird that it does stuff like that sometimes. Because it generally is very good at, like, picking things that you are interested in. But yeah, sometimes they'll do that. But yeah, I like the game. I platinumed it, so I would hope so.
You like the game.
There are issues, but we will save that for the Jedi Survivor episode.
Yeah.
Because there are things I would like to talk about that I think are issues with this game. And they're not issues that I entirely ran into, but they are issues that we need to talk about because they are prevalent and they are a thing. And it's more of a gaming issue than we're talking mechanical issues. I'd say the story is perfect. It's mechanical issues that we got because it's a video game. You got to talk about the video game side. Anyways, next week though we're talking comic books. High Republic Phase 2, Volume 1, Balance of the Force, which is the first 5 issues. So if any of y'all are trying to read with us, because I mean I assume some of y'all try to read with us and keep up with what we do. If you're in the Discord, it's even easier. So there's a way to get to the Discord, and you can do that by, if you're watching on YouTube, it's linked down below in the description box. If you are watching on Twitch, it is somewhere linked. There's a link, because Twitch lets you put your links there, so Discord is linked there somewhere. And then I would also like to thank our Patreon subscriber, speaking of, which is Miss Jennifer Brantley. Continues to be an awesome Patreon member. And if you would like to be a Patreon member, you can check us out at patreon.com/escaperealityfilms, where you can watch our YouTube content a week before it's uploaded to YouTube, which I am getting back to doing. I've been kind of bad with it the past, because I haven't been
full tilt on Jedi.
Yeah, so there have not been any new non-Jedi Survivor things on the YouTube channel for a week and a few days. So we are now back to our regularly scheduled programming now that I'm done with Jedi Survivor. Although off air I'm playing New Game Plus and getting my ass whooped because while I only bumped it to Jedi Padawan, I added, because you know how I don't know if you've read the mechanical stuff. There's stuff that so you know how you have your like additional things that you can add to your character. There's one that makes it to where basically Cal is a 2-hit death, but it also makes your enemies 2-hit deaths. So even on Padawan setting where it's easy to deflect, I'm still getting my ass kicked because if I get hit twice,
dead.
So I'm not even off Coruscant yet. And then I've got another one set where every time I die, it randomizes your outfit and lightsaber and everything, which that one's fun. And then I forget what the third one does. There's 3 that they add. Perks is what they're called. And there's like one more perk. I forget what it's called. I think. And then there's also, they added you being able to have a red lightsaber. And then the party lightsaber, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a party lightsaber. So I haven't seen the red or party lightsabers yet in my, because I'm going out of my way by not changing my outfits on purpose. I'm letting the randomization pick do its thing. And so I'm hoping that I will in the wild get that. But yeah, I would also like to thank Cult Movie Cantina, Mobcast Network, who let us use the space. They are very kind, and they are a podcast group that I work with where I co-produce and co-host with them. Cult Movie Cantina is one of those shows where we talk about cult movies and stuff like that. We're currently on a bit of a break because Scotty, the person in charge, who's been on the show before, he's currently doing a play that he's directing. Speaking of, we have our local kind of awards that we do that the local newspaper does, the Nappies. One of the shows he did last year is up for the running on the Nappies, and our podcast and the Cult Movie Cantina is also for the running for the Nappies for best podcast. So if you want to support us and vote for us, you should be able to find the link for that on Facebook.com/Cult Movie Cantina, because I know we've shared it there. So if you want to support that podcast and vote for us for the Nappies, you can. What is it, day 11 now of Nappy voting? Day 12? Something like that. Something like that.
Sorry, man. I'm not informed about that kind of thing.
Well, now you are, and now you should know to go vote for us. So that way we can get best podcast. Well, not this podcast, but the other podcast I do. We're not big enough yet to get. We haven't hit 500 yet on YouTube. We're getting there. We're getting there. We've been going. So we had slowed down, but it's going up again. Because I see it every now and then. We're 360 subscribers right now, which this morning we were 357. So it's going up. And I only noticed that because I've been uploading stuff today. In fact, when I get home, I'm going to record some more stuff because I'm behind a little bit on the Patreon stuff. I need to make a Demon Souls video and a Fortnite video. And I finished Last of Us.
You finished The Last of Us?
Yes. So if you join our Patreon, you can watch the finale of my Last of Us run a week before everybody else. And so
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and then I'm going to play the Left Behind DLC as well.
Good, you should.
That's going to be considered a new show, Let's Play show, because I'm going to call it Last of Us Left Behind, rather than Last of Us Remastered, because it's technically its own thing. And then I'll play part 2 when we get closer to when the season 2 of the show comes out, because that's when you want to. You got to work with the algorithm. The algorithm will love it then. And then I finished playing. Well, I haven't finished Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, which is also the YouTube game I've been playing. And that one though is a little bit longer. The Dark Alliance is a little bit longer because it's a hack and slash type. Because there's Baldur's Gate, which is the main actual RPG games.
Yeah. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance is not.
It's a hack and slash.
It's like a hack and slash beat 'em up.
From like a top, yeah. Whereas the new Dark Alliance is more, because the more recent Dark Alliance, which is just D&D Dark Alliance, it's not Baldur's Gate. It's no longer affiliated with the Baldur's Gate titles. It's more, which is the newer one where you play as Dritz and that party.
Yeah.
The new one is more of a modern like looter shooter, but without the shooting element, because it's a beat 'em up looter. Mm-hmm. Because the new one is like you get your loot, you get the better loot, and then you can redo the dungeons.
Me and Ethan went and we played it,
and it's fun, but only with your friends.
I was like, hey man, did you read to make sure you understand what these the ability scores on the side do? And he went, no, I just started punching things. And I'm like, we should probably do that, because that seems important. Because those abilities do different things.
Yep.
Because it's a different kind of game.
Yeah, because it's a looter beat 'em up.
Yeah. For some reason, charisma recharges your special.
I guess they consider it like charisma because there is magic that's charisma based. So maybe your special is a magic ability that's charisma based.
Yeah.
if you want to put it in D&D terms. But it's all, but like that's the thing that nobody got about Dark Alliance in general, especially with the newer one, is that well, also read what you're buying, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's D&D, so it's an RPG, and it's like, no, 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 no. The Dark Alliance series has never been an RPG. It has RPG elements, but it's not an RPG series. Now, classic Baldur's Gate is.
This is another one of, you should probably read like the tags for a show before you, or like at least the summary.
Yeah. Or at least maybe a review. Like, and I will say Dark Alliance was buggy when it came out, the new one. I'd say it's cleaned up a little bit now, and we've finally got all of our DLC that we were promised at the beginning of when this game came out, because it took forever for the DLC to come out. But everything is here now. They even have a new class where you can play as a mage now. You play as a tiefling mage or sorcerer or something like that, and that's the fourth class that you can play, or fourth, yeah, because you got Dritz. No, fifth, because it came with 4.
Yep.
But it's only a 4-player game, so somebody's gonna have to pick between what if they want the mage or something else, because it came with Dritz, Bjorn, or Brunner. Sorry, no, Bjorn is Brunner, Bjorn, and then I forget the ranger. I forget her name. All of a sudden, Sylvis, not Savant.
I think so. She's not a ranger.
Or whatever she is. No, you're right. Dritz is the ranger. She's like.
I think she's supposed to be an arcane archer.
Okay.
So she's a fighter.
Okay. I thought arcane. Okay, yeah.
Like that's lore-wise what she is.
Yeah. And then you now have your tiefling mage, sorcerer. And then you have some new adventures new dungeons you can do now as well. Because they added some free ones, but then they added the ones that if you paid for the season pass and the DLC like I did, then you get that as well. Anyways, that stuff you can find on the YouTube channel and also on the Patreon. So that's all that stuff. And then going back to people we want to thank, we also want to thank Gamers and Geeks, which is our local gaming shop here in Mobile, Alabama. If you're ever down here, check us out. It's on Howells Ferry and Moffett. And it's a little shopping center, and you'll see the big sign on the building, and have all your gaming needs and accessories. And so if you like card games, like the new Star Wars game that's coming out, this is a place where you would find it, and RPGs and stuff like that. So if you like D&D like we do, then this is the place to go to get some of your books, maybe, and some miniatures and stuff. They got all that. They got your Warhammer and your Magic and your Pokemon. They even have Magic Nights. I think is it Wednesday or Fridays?
I'm not sure.
I know Sundays they do D&D Adventurers League, so if you have ever wanted to try D&D and you were never sure about, joining like you have trouble finding a party of people to play with, Adventurers League is for that. That's where the store runs the campaigns for you, and people come in and just play, and so a bunch of strangers can play D&D together. It's a good little bit of community building. They also do cons every now and then. I think the next con is in June. The most recent one was Dragon Ball Con, which that was fun. They had some Dragon Ball voice actors and stuff like that here. Like they had original Bulma. American original Bulma, I should say. I should say for the English, because there's original, and then there's American original, or English original.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, my brain got confused and then really sad because I thought the original Bulma was dead.
No.
No, she's alive.
She just doesn't voice Bulma.
But all of the and the reason why I got sad is because I was thinking about all the old, really old Batman voices.
Oh yeah, I was about to say I don't think all of them are gone. Yeah, I was about to say I don't think any Dragon Ball voice actor has passed.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
It's just they changed it because there's been different versions of the translate of the dubs, yeah. And so because I think there's 2 different versions of Z. Yeah. Because you have your well, I meant Z, just Z, or are you talking? No, sorry, no. There's 2 different versions of Dragon Ball original because you have your Blue Ocean and then your Funimation So that's where you would get your original voice actors and then your current. And the Funimation ones are the ones who have done all of them ever since. And the the blue dub is funny. It's I'd say if you've watched Dragon Ball before even and you've never watched the blue dub, do it. It's a fun. It's almost like watching Dragon Ball Z abridged. And so, but we appreciate the original voice actors because without that, then there would have never been the Funimation translations either. Like, and it really comes down to translations. That's why the dubs are different. Like they just translated the scripts differently. But anyway, yeah.
Talk about Engage Gaming.
Yeah, Engage Gaming. They're also a shop that shares the little shopping center here. Like specifically this particular part of the building, they share the same area as Gamers and Geeks. And they are like a video game rental type thing, but like in-store rental, so you don't take anything with you. But they let you pay an hourly fee to play the consoles that they provide, which include PS5s, Xbox Series S and X, like the newest stuff, PC, VR. They even provide some video games. So if you want to play Survivor, for example, and you don't have a good enough PC, which nobody does apparently, which is one of the things we're going to talk about when we talk about Survivor, or if you wanna, or if you don't have a PS5 and you want to play like the newest PS5 exclusives, that's how you can do it. You can also pay a monthly membership fee, and they reduce the rate of the hourly fee. So it's a cool thing. I think it's a cool service that I've never really heard of that idea until I saw Engage. Like, and I think that's a cool idea. Like being able, because then it's a cool way to provide gaming opportunities to people that are interested in gaming but don't have the money to buy a $600 console. You know, $600 to $700 console, depending on if you're getting an Xbox or a PlayStation. So like it's a way to provide that type of experience still. Same thing with the VR. Like you can't afford, like VR is expensive. So, and requires a lot of room. So if you don't have that, I think it's a cool way for people to get into that. And then we've got Steam Dungeon, which includes our buddy Kiari, who plays with you.
For the one shot, he played Riker,
which was fun. He was our thief. Yeah, he was our rogue.
Yeah. So if you want to see Trials of Nebu over at Steam, all caps _dungeon.
On twitch.tv.
From 5 to 7 Central Standard Time.
Yep, there you go. On Sundays.
Yep.
So tomorrow.
I'll actually be able to join this one.
I
have no idea what happened.
Okay, so
when I asked, the answers were vague.
Oh, so something must have went down.
All I remember is they invited them to dinner, and they got.
Because I thought
where they didn't have any reservations.
Okay.
Which is weird.
Because I thought y'all had downtime, so I guess
we're still in that week of downtime, but character stuff happened.
Yeah.
And it's like big whoops was made.
Oh, so now that downtime might be cut a bit because.
As far as Simon knows, nothing has changed. Because no one sent him any message or anything like, hey, there's been a problem. So Simon's just off doing a little bit of investigation into the city.
Yep.
Which is weird because he's a barbarian.
But, so that's what's going on, at least from your perspective.
As far as I know.
So, I mean, maybe our audience knows more because maybe they've been watching because we've been advertising this for what, a couple months now?
Yeah.
So. That's everything though that I can think of. I think we went over everything. Yeah, we talked about the Patreon. We talked about cult movie. We talked about it's part of Gamers and Geeks. There's an arcade in the back. We've talked about it before. You pay $10, get a wristband.
You haven't listened to the ending spiel on the 69th episode.
Yeah.
By the 69th episode.
I mean, I figure that's all part of when I talk about Gamers and Geeks. I don't think we need to talk about literally everything that Gamers and Geeks does.
Yeah.
They do a lot. So we talked about Gamers Geeks, talked about Engage, talked about Mopcasts, talked about Steam_Dungeon, talked about Patreon, talked about... Oh, yeah, that's right. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/Escape Reality Films, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you're watching on Twitch, which is twitch.tv, feel free to follow or subscribe. There we go. Those are the things I was missing. We currently don't have a subscriber because Matt forgot that he was doing it through his Prime sub, because you get your free Prime sub, but Prime automatically cancels it after that month that you've subscribed. So we've been giving him credit like past when he was subscribed, but he's also my friend, so
Thanks for showing up, Matt. It's very nice.
yeah. Thanks for giving us support when you can. He's been working hard. He's studying film, and oh boy, the drama of being a film student and having to turn in projects on time, and having to work with groups.
Oh yeah,
Any group project. If you have ever done a group project, you know the pain, even if you've never done a film group project. It's even worse because he told me they had lost footage.
Oh no.
So they had to, they lost a day and a half of filming, and so they had to refilm. And thankfully, I think this was for a club. Yeah. But they still had a deadline that they're having to meet, so I think they've now they're hitting that deadline, I think, this week. So I'll find out Monday when he joins us for movie night in Sawyer's server. Which we didn't do one last night because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
We were gonna do secret. We finished our Pixar. So, one of my buddies, Sawyer. You can check her out at Sawyerism on TikTok and any social media that she's on. She talks Star Wars. She talks. She's currently doing a High Republic recap for people. So if you've never gotten into the High Republic, which is something that we talk about a lot. She's been trying to recap a lot of what's going on so she's currently going through phase 1 and recapping the major highlights and stuff that people should know of what happened. And then she also she's been talking about our favorite Glup Shitto from Survivor, Turgle. And then she's a biologist too, so she talks Resident Evil and talks about the biology of that stuff. And does the same for Star Wars.
Fucking Resident Evil monsters are sorcery. I don't care what anyone says.
And then she also did some, because Last of Us was out. She did some biology on that as well. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, you should check her out. She's a good friend of the channel, and I'm a mod on her Discord, and I run movie nights on Mondays and Fridays for them, which you can. If you find her social media, you can find the Discord for it. There's a lot of cool stuff. They do game nights. They also are trying to do D&D stuff every now and then. I don't know how often they run D&D because it's not something I run. But on Mondays, we do 18+ movie nights. So if you're an adult and you join the server, we do rated R stuff on Mondays. I don't know I can't remember what this week's one is supposed to be. But we just finished for the group, I call it family movie nights. It's the general audience movie nights, which are Fridays. We had just finished our Pixar marathon, so we've done every Pixar movie now. And then after that, we've gotten a lot of requests for franchises. Well, kind of franchises. We've gotten one person has wanted every Don Bluth film. So Secret of NIMH, American Tail, Land Before Time, Anastasia.
Oh, Secret of NIMH.
And so that's what we're going to start with. So we were going to do that last night, but I was feeling fatigued, and I said, I don't want to host movie night. Sorry, guys.
Secret of NIMH. That has been a while.
So we're doing those in release order. So we're going to start with Secret of NIMH.
The Magic Prayer Mouse Lady.
And then the other request we got was all the X-Men films.
All of them.
Yes, so the only exceptions that are not going to be shown is I'm going to make Logan part of the 18+ nights. I already put it in our list because Logan is rated R. So it can't be in the general nights. Deadpool, we've already done both films in the adult movie nights. So
that one's discarded as well.
New Mutants is the one that the person who requested all the X-Men films, that's the one film that she said no. She doesn't want New Mutants because she doesn't like what they did with Magic. The character, Magic.
Marvel's big. I don't know every character's
Yeah.
name.
And so, Magic with a K. Well, with a CK. Which is fair. It's not the best version of Magic for sure. And you can tell New Mutants was a mess, and I think even comparatively, Wolverine Origins has more worth to it than New Mutants. Dark Phoenix has more worth to it than New Mutants.
Okay. I like old X-Men trilogy.
No, but the new X-Men, Dark Phoenix was the last of the younger.
Oh,
Because remember the reboot. It's a new timeline, but it's still part of the same franchise because it's just a new timeline. But yeah, so we're even doing those. And then the third thing that somebody requested was all the Star Trek films. So we're going to do classic and Kelvin timeline. And so, well, it's 9 classic films plus only 3 Kelvin, yeah. So it's only a little over if you did every Star Wars film by 1. Actually, no, not even, because if you count the Clone Wars movie, then it's exactly 12 too. And so, but yeah, so, and what we're going to do is that we're going to alternate between each franchise, so that way we get a good mix. So we're going to do Secret of NIMH first X-Men film, first Star Trek film, and then the next Don Bluth film, so on and so forth. That way, and then of course, if anybody adds anything else they want to request that's family, that's like a general audience watchable, so PG-13 back, then I'll add it to the end of the list. And so, and then whenever we get to it, we get to it. We run the movie nights based on when people request something. So your movie gets added to the end of the list, and then eventually when we get to it. That way everybody's movie gets to be shown eventually. And so, because it's a fair way of doing it, and it keeps... We used to do the voting thing, and where we'd have 2 movies run up against each other, but I figure it's just easier, because not everybody votes that wants to watch movies, so I'm just like, okay, we're just going to... But, yep. Alright, well, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching again. We'll see you all next week to talk the High Republic 2022 comic run, the first 5 issues, and I've spoken.
Be safe.